Welcome back to another episode of a very British space program. It is the 31st of December 1965 and we are launching Tempest Node 3. However, things might not go brilliantly. Please join me. So yeah, we have launched Node 3 and this is the largest single habitation unit placed in orbit yet. It's got facilities for long-term life in space and all sorts of wonderful exercise and relaxation things. Slight problem, its attitude control systems are pretty much non-functional. It has really intermittent control, so yeah, that is a problem for us. Despite all the work that we did with it, it was just uncontrollable. So we've had to actually go back to the drawing board. So the failure has actually meant that we've had to put a pause on expansion of Tempest. And in fact, expansion of the crewed program in general is sort of in jeopardy at the moment. So we bring our crew back down from Tempest because there is no real point having them there. There is no role for them at the moment. They are not going to be testing anything because we can't actually get anything up there. And it was decided to be a bit wasteful having them just sit up there with no real idea as to what the next steps were. However, by the 18th of January 1966, we have been able to hastily retrofit our Tempest Node X, which was actually going to be a little test vehicle for us, and it was a very simple module, so it was much easier for us to work with, really. It is basically going to be testing new orientation and control systems that were not functioning in our previous Space Harbour module. It seems, and this is out of world, shall we say, yeah, the RCS systems on a lot of our stuff is playing up, so we have a problem with Space Harbours in general at the moment, and we're having to retrofit significantly. If we had a better version of KSP, I could probably go up and actually attach RCS ports, but I cannot do that because this is in 1.8.1, I think. So it's it's well before that. So Node X is actually and it was originally going to be an experimental Space Harbour module for a different project that we had in mind, but we've retrofitted it. We've launched it on a Blue Knight 2, and it's basically going to just attempt to dock with the station, and that's its major role in this one. And yeah, as it approaches the station, we were getting a lot of orbital movement, shall we say. It was actually quite challenging to get this rendezvous because while we're not limited on time because we don't have crew on board, we don't have life support issues or anything like that, yeah, time warp is kicking in and is really being a problem. Even single step time warp would, even graduating it in slowly would potentially cause problems. So we're actually very, very much in a very similar orbit now, and we're just trying to hold it, and hopefully we're gonna be able to get a rendezvous. So we do that. We do some burns, and again, we have actually got. I should point out this Node X actually is a giant fuel tank. It is not fully laden with fuel, I should say now, and it's not available to the engines. It is basically just a storage unit of fuel. The idea being that having that in orbit would actually give us some ability to do some other things that we might want to do. So that's what we're looking at really with Node X, is its potential in future. And so it was very important to us that we actually trialed that we could get it to work, because it is fundamental to some of the next steps that we're going to take. If we can't get fuel and things like that, rendezvous carried out, we're pretty much dead in the water with our launch vehicles at the moment. So this was very important to us. And you can see here we actually come in, and another interesting problem we have is I can no longer physical or normal time warp. You can see there I did a little physical time warp, and yeah, the Space Harbour decides it wants to vanish off the screen when I do that. It actually actively accelerates away from its current location, and then when you turn back it comes in. But yeah, so time warp is no longer a thing we can do in this version of the game, it seems. So that's going to be fun for us. So anyway, we're coming in, and this was one of the longest, and I've actually sort of trimmed this down so it's at quite a high acceleration, shall we say. But yeah, this was horrendous, this docking procedure. So to try and help us with the docking, I actually start to rotate Tempest sideways to try and basically mean that we're going to slew beside one of the docking ports we want. you will see we've got this oscillation developed. It seems that when I'm using stock SAS, it will oscillate on the roll. And when I use Smart SAS, I get oscillation on the pitch axis, which is really interesting. So anyway, this went on for a while, and you can see now I'd given up on trying to orientate the craft properly, and we've now got this odd rotation, and it is a case of dock on rotation. So you can see here I come in and timing it to perfection. I'm trying to just get in there and just slam it in, and we get a dump, and then come on, catch. I'm using the RSS to hold us in, and we get there. So it was one of the most horrible docking processes I have ever done. I will say now, we will not be adding anything else to Tempest. There is actually 2 modules, including a backup for Node 3. There's another 2 modules that should actually go on Tempest. We should actually have a science laboratory. We should have that additional sort of accommodation unit that was Node 3. And we should also have an adaptation of our endurance module, which is actually going to be used so that we've got a docking port away from the solar arrays when they're finished and arranged properly. So that was for added docking access. So we'd have the 2 end docking ports you can see on there, and then a higher one on the normal as well. However, those will not be going up. They're on pause because of various issues, and so we've decided we need to streamline the program. We're gonna go for, you know what, we need to get to our final goals, and so that's what this episode's about. It's going to be about first of all unveiling a new launch vehicle, and here it is. I have come up with many names for this. I thought of naming it after a member of the royal family, and then I thought about the color code system we've been using, and so I think we're just going to call it the Super Heavy at the moment. It is a Super Heavy launch vehicle, but if you would like to give it a name, please comment down below, because I don't know what we would call it. We're not announcing it to the Americans or the Russians or the Soviets even, because they don't need to know about it right now. It is huge though. It is capable of putting around 100 tons into orbit. It is massive, quite simply. It is huge. So on the top there, you will see we have what looks like our intermediate transfer stage. That's correct. We've actually adapted that and enlarged it. So this is an advanced intermediate transfer stage. Above that, we have our rendezvous and control system. And then on top of that is another Node X. Now this one is again partially fueled, so it holds some fuel, but it's not going to go to Tempest Station, or at least not this Tempest Station. Now this one's going on a different mission. Oh, but I should point out, this is the 14th of April 1966. We've gone about 3 months ahead of where we were, and Node X is on its way to the moon. That's right, we're going to put this in orbit around the moon, very much in the same way that we put our previous little fuel system there, just as a little place for our craft to sip and suck up some little bits of fuel before they return back to Earth. This is going to be doing pretty much the same thing around the moon there, and we've got enough fuel on there to pretty much refuel one of our Faradays to, I think, full capacity, if not more. There's actually a lot on there. Now I will say the tank is not full, so this could actually be topped up, and we may actually do that. We may use some other craft to send fuel over, but it'll ask, there's a nice sort of reservoir for us, and again it's got kerosene, it's got HTP in there, and it's going to basically just store those. Obviously the HTP after a long time in space will basically start to break down, because that's what HTP does over a long period of time. Of course we've made sure that the insides of the tanking and everything, we're very used to HTP now, so we don't need to worry about, any sort of things getting in the way and acting as catalysts, because that could be pretty disastrous. So this is going to set off towards the moon, and that's going to take about 4 days to get there, and it's going to take a nice leisurely route to the moon. So that's 14th of April, off it goes to the moon. However, that is not the only thing we're going to send to the moon. Nope, that's right. The day after, the 15th of April 1966, we are launching yet another of our super heavy craft. I think I like the idea of calling it the Grey Queen. Anyway, we are launching another of our super heavy craft, and that is going to carry Tempest to Node 1. That's right, we're going to send a Tempest station to the moon. Yeah, you can see where this is going. We want to stay at the moon. We don't want to just, visit. We want to be able to stay. I should point out, this super heavy, its launch stages, I think I can't even remember how many engines are on the first stage, but it is first stage powered by those those, I think it's TOW engines, which are basically our RZ2s but converted to run on HTP and kerosene. And then we've got another set of TOWs on the second stage there. I think there's I can't remember how many there are, and then I'll have to go back and count. It's terrible. There's so many engines. It's so many. I know the Russians have got something very similar, where they've got lots of engine clusters, and I think they're probably copying us actually. And then the final stage is just 4 of those TOW engines. And again, this one is using that uprated, modified, advanced intermediate transfer stage. We never really got to the post-intermediate transfer stage, did we? We were just adapting the same stage, and that's going to send pretty much the same sort of orbital bus off, and the Tempest 2 station, which has got a little bit of upgrades, primarily to its RCS, its reaction control. We've upgraded and we've modified to now be more, so shall we say, consistent, and we've also given it a bit more sort of more up-to-date control systems, because Tempest 1 is actually a little bit old now. It was built a while ago, and it's been sat to launch and orbit and so forth. So there we go. That's heading off to the moon. So there's 2 nodes now going to the moon. We've got Node 1 for Tempest 2. We've got Node X for Tempest 2. And so we're going to have to bring those together around the moon at some point. And then it starts to creates what we call critical mass. We know the Americans have some plans, and we're pretty sure the Russians have some plans to go to the moon. And from our, shall we say, discussions with colleagues, we are aware that the Americans are probably going to be looking at sort of disposable systems. We don't really want to go that way. As you can see, we're actually the advanced intermediate transfer stage there is actually we've set it on a course which will mean that it goes past our Tempest 2 Node 1, and is actually going to impact the surface, because we've got craft down on the surface that will be able to get some science for that. So we're going to use that as a little impactor for us. Alright, so Node 1 actually arrives first in the lunar sphere of influence, and it is going to do a capture burn using that little sort of transfer tug that it's got on the tail end there, that little addition that we've sent on. It does put itself into an orbit which is actually inclined, pretty much aligned with the Earth, and it was tempting to actually keep it on that. The decision was made to actually put it onto an equatorial orbit, which does mean that we're actually going to use extra delta V when we arrive at the station and when we depart to go back to Earth. That's one of the big problems of doing this. However, it was decided that actually an equatorial orbit was really nice because it allowed us basically full coverage of the moon. It would allow us to actually launch craft into different sort of profiles, shall we say, around the moon more easily, and it might make docking a little easier in future for other things. So that's how we decided to go with it, and it did take a little bit of fuel to get that sort of aligned, particularly just changing inclination, but because of the moon size and the fact that we've got quite a highly elliptic orbit there, we were actually able to do it reasonably cheaply. In reality, we probably want to actually change our departure time and arrival time at the moon so that we could actually get a nicer sort of ascending descending node sort of arrangement, but this wasn't too bad. It could have been a lot worse, and so there you go. We're going to pull this down shortly into a tighter orbit. Now, second to arrive, of course, was Node X, and so it came in and did pretty much the same thing. It's going to pull itself into a little orbit there, and you can see it just firing away that engine. It is a row engine on that little stage, and it's actually the only row engine on this mission, which is quite interesting. We chose to go with row engines only for that because they are actually relightable. Whereas the others, I think we've got thrusters on the actual main craft that we've got on the node that are just, I think they're 1 kilonewton thrusters, multiple of them, and then the rest of the craft have actually got either a Spectre or any other single light engine. So the row gave us that ability to do this sort of reorientation and things like that. It made things just a little bit easier than using the main craft to do all of these, which was potentially going to be quite slow. So Node X there is about 20 tons. We've got about 20 tons there in orbit of the moon. And of course, we know that Node 1 is again about 20 tons in orbit. So we've got about, close to 40 tons now in orbit around the moon. With nothing really to do with it, because it is just going to sit there. And again, we're going to do our little normal burn there just to bring it up into the same plane. And then I've cut out basically all of the orbital maneuvers, but we bring them in for pretty much a docking, and this was actually quite a nice little approach. Aligned it quite nicely. We moved in. The moon, I tend to find, is a little easier to dock around. Well, it's a lot easier to dock around than Earth. I'm not entirely sure why, and you'll see here what we actually do is we let the craft drift down, not firing any thrusters towards the station at all, which is very nice. I'm trying to be a bit nicer like that. We probably will not always be like that. We're doing a bit of orientation now. We're going to try and position ourselves. I originally thought of lining it up so that it was along the main axis of Node 1, and then I made the decision, just because of what we've got coming along, to actually put it on the side there, which gives us a bit of a better target for future docking and for future expansion potentially. And I'm also aware of some other things that we have coming and where they're going to need to go and things like that. So yes, this will be getting bigger, but not probably in the way you think it's going to get bigger, shall we say. So this was actually, despite the firing of the RCS and things like that, this was not a bad docking. We actually had a slight hitch there on the first approach where we overcooked it, but then I just basically take my time, and I have had better dockings, shall we say. I think in the next episode you will see some absolutely, see there we're now firing our RSS towards the target. I don't like doing that. We actually have some stunningly good dockings coming up in the next episode, but that's gonna have to be it for this episode. We're actually going to slide in now, closing in to this. We have basically put together around the moon a little space harbour, and of course space harbours, they need ships to go to them. So in the next episode we're going to be sending some craft there, and let's see what happens. But from me and from this save, which is it's starting to break down quite a bit, please comment down below on next steps, what you'd like to see, things like that. And until next time, have a great one.